What is D&D is for nerds? If I had to describe it, I would describe it as chaos recorded on tape. But if I needed to give a less figurative answer, I guess it's a bunch of friends coming together and playing some Dungeons and some Dragons. It's pretty simple. It's kind of in the name, I guess.
Doing a D&D podcast is something that Zamet, you wanted for a long time.
Yes.
Jackson and Zamet knew that they wanted to do a D&D podcast, but neither of them had the knowledge of the game to get it off the ground. Jackson knew me because we were doing personal games together. He asked me if I wanted to help them out with it. I said yes, and a long wait later, we actually started getting into the game.
The first time I ever really played D&D was the first episode of D&D is for Nerds.
We did that little game beforehand. We did that little tester game.
Doesn't really count, does it?
All I remember from that game is that I got a spear through my neck and I was stunned. And I could only do one action a turn, and it was fucking awesome.
I got into it because I used to play Dungeons & Dragons with a group of friends, and Jackson knew about them. And I was over here one day, and Jack asked if I did Dungeons & Dragons. And I said yes. And he's like, do you want to be on a show? And I said, yes!
I don't like to think about when I first started playing D&D because it's nearly a decade ago, and I don't like that. I hate that. I hate that a lot, that it's about a decade now.
Favorite thing about playing D&D, apart from the stupid voices that we can sometimes try and get away with, I guess it's like a storytelling aspect of it all. Because it is, at the end of the day, collaborative storytelling.
Typically it starts off with an idea, an inkling, and that idea could be something as simple as a mechanic, or the idea could be just the idea of a story, like a lawman who's hit harsh times and he needs to decide whether or not he wants to be a true lawman, true good guy, or maybe if it's just easier and more convenient to be a bad guy instead. Start with that idea, then with that's like the beating heart, I start to construct the skeleton around it. So what are the bare bones? What do I want to tell in this story? I've always described D&D as either a choose your own adventure or as one person is telling a story and everyone else is characters in that story. And that's how I always like to think of D&D, as a story told semi-communally. It's always easier if you get your players to find the thread themselves. So the first session would be character creation of a regular game, would be character creation, then dumping you in an area, letting them find the seed. That's session one. They've got the seed, then I can write the story from there. That's not always. Sometimes I'll have like a really compelling idea and I'll push players into it, but in a D&D's for Nerds specific adventure, I know that Jackson, Zamet, Cass, I know they're clever enough people to, if I dangle a thread, they know that they need to grab it or should grab it. They might grab some other threads along the way, and I got to deal with that, but they're kind enough to never actively harm me.
I always have this memory of, in a personal game, we were sitting down, we were about to do the game, and one of my friends turned to me and they said, what kind of obnoxious accent are you going to do this game, Jackson? And if that don't just explain 99% of where a character begins for me, it's like if I get the voice first, the accent first, and then I can, from that, figure out who that character is, and then once I know who that character is, I'm like, I guess they're a bard or whatever. That's kind of how it goes out for me. And also, I guess, whatever the game is going to be. If Adam's like, hey, you're all, I don't know, cops, I'm like, okay, well, that gives me like a nice limited range of sort of archetypes to choose from, or you're all this, or you're all that. And then, kind of work upwards from there.
I'm still wanting to play my way through every single class and race and everything that there is. So I'll usually start with a class I want to try or a race I want to be, usually class. And then sort of, start letting your imagination run wild, I guess, being like, okay, what are my options? And then running through, I want to be this class, what are the different races I could be? Oh, awesome, cool. And then you have an idea for what that character does.
Yeah, I think how I choose what character or creating a character is always it's always like looking at the classes and races kind of stuff and being like, what combination can I do there? And then being like, what would they do for a living? I don't know, because to me I always want to try and find what characters do because in my head, like, adventuring isn't a job.
Yeah.
Find a better job. And so it's always trying to, like, pinpoint them in a world. It's always trying to find motivations for, like, characters is always the sort of, like, both the easiest and hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
The best part for me about playing D&D is it's a very good way, as I touched on before, it's a very good way for me to get the stories I have out of me, because I just get full of them.
And so while Adam has his own story that we want to tell, or he wants to tell, sorry, each one of us is playing a character that, we have a story that we want to tell.
Yeah.
And so I feel some campaigns are better than others in that terms of like narrative sort of storyline and narrative structure. And it's always kind of fun when that sort of happens. And like, sort of like, oh my God, if you listen back to say something happening in say episode 1 and then it kind of comes to fruition down the track, or if it's just like an accidental sort of theme that happened throughout the whole campaign, I find that very neat.
The people. It's really, the people I play with, I'm very, very lucky. And it's just very fun to constantly be, creating a world with everyone. And Adam's super, super talented at making up stories and the really, really detailed, gory ends of everyone. So I'll be sitting there being very disturbed, but quite happy. The people, to be honest. And doing silly things, and sometimes annoying Adam a little bit, but I guess that comes back to people.
Is D&D just for nerds?
Yes,
Yeah.
nerds and dweebs.
Absolute fucking losers.
Don't play D&D, you loser. Ugh.
No, D&D's good.
Is D&D only for nerds?
No. Am I a nerd?
I think D&D is for anyone, but when you start getting into it, you kind of become a nerd.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to support our bullshit, why not become a Sanspants Plus member today? Check the show notes or head to our website, sanspantsradio.com.